It was the first day of the new semester at the prestigious Intergalactic Academy, and the air was filled with excitement. The Academy, known for training the most exceptional students from across the galaxy, had one unique feature. It was made up entirely of alien girls from different planets and species. These girls were some of the brightest and most powerful beings in the universe, excelling in everything from combat tactics to advanced diplomacy. In a large classroom decorated with holographic screens, each girl sat in perfect silence, awaiting their instructor. They all knew that today would be important. The Academy had a reputation for producing the finest students. Every one of them had already proven themselves in their respective fields. To most of them, the idea of having a new student didn't seem that remarkable. But this time, it was different. The new student wasn't an alien. He was a human. Humanity, in the eyes of the galaxy, was considered primitive. Their technology was outdated. Their society had only just reached the stars, and they were often seen as weak. So, when the Academy had announced that a human boy would be joining their class, the girls were skeptical. They had heard the rumors about humans, but they were not capable of competing with the advanced species of the galaxy. The instructor, an elderly alien with deep knowledge of all things galactic, stood at the front of the room. His voice echoed through the room as he introduced the new student. "Class, today we welcome a new member. His name is Ethan, and he comes from Earth, a planet that has only recently joined the intergalactic community. Let us show him the same respect we show each other." As the door opened, all eyes turned to the entrance. Ethan stepped inside, feeling every pair of alien eyes watching him. He was tall and slender, with short brown hair and a calm demeanor. His uniform was simple, made from Earth's materials, unlike the high-tech outfits of the alien students. His presence felt out of place, but he didn't mind. He had been prepared for this moment his whole life. The silence in the room was deafening. The alien girls whispered among themselves, exchanging glances, clearly amused by his arrival. They couldn't believe that a human boy was standing among them, in the very academy where only the best of the galaxy were trained. One of the girls, Zara, a tall and muscular alien from the warrior species known for their strength, raised an eyebrow as she scanned Ethan. She wasn't impressed. In fact, she was curious to see how long he would last. Ethan stood tall, though unbothered by the intense stares. He had always been taught to believe in himself and his abilities. No matter where he came from, he had earned his place here. He had studied the Academy's curriculum and prepared for this day for months. As far as he was concerned, the galaxy would soon learn that humanity had more to offer than they thought. The instructor gestured for Ethan to take a seat. "Ethan, feel free to sit anywhere you'd like." Ethan nodded and chose a seat near the front, not wanting to hide in the back of the room. He didn't want to be invisible. As he sat down, the room seemed to settle into a deeper silence, the girls unsure of what to make of him. He could sense their judgment, their skepticism. But instead of feeling nervous, he felt a sense of determination. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to back down now. Zara, sitting in the back of the room, exchanged looks with Kara, an alien princess from a race known for their combat skills. Kara had a reputation for being fierce and prideful. She was the strongest of them all, and she was not afraid to show it. "Do you think he'll last a week?" Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kara smirked. "I'd give him 3 days. Humans don't belong here. They're too weak." Zara chuckled. "Maybe he'll surprise us, but I won't hold my breath." The instructor began the day's lesson, speaking of galactic history, interspecies diplomacy, and the importance of teamwork. Ethan listened intently, absorbing every word. He wasn't intimidated by the subject matter. In fact, he found it fascinating. He'd always believed that humans had much to contribute to the galaxy, even if most people didn't believe it yet. As the lesson continued, Ethan quietly raised his hand. The instructor paused, surprised. "Yes, Ethan." Ethan's voice was calm but confident. "I have a question. In the history of the galaxy, how many species have managed to rise above their initial limitations to become leaders?" The entire room fell silent. This was not a question they had expected from a human. The instructor seemed impressed but curious. "That's a thoughtful question, Ethan. Many species have risen beyond their early struggles. But why do you ask?" Ethan smiled slightly. Because I believe humans have the potential to be one of those species. The alien girls looked at each other, surprised by his confidence. For the first time that day, they started to reconsider their assumptions about him. Zara looked down, deep in thought. Kara raised an eyebrow, no longer completely certain that Ethan was someone to be underestimated. The instructor nodded. An interesting perspective. Let's continue the lesson. As the day went on, Ethan showed a surprising level of knowledge and insight. He wasn't just a passive student, actively engaged in every discussion, sharing ideas that challenged the others. He didn't boast about his knowledge, but he made his presence known in a quiet yet undeniable way. The alien girls began to notice him not as a novelty, but as someone who was, perhaps, worth paying attention to. By the end of the day, Ethan had made a lasting impression. While the girls were still uncertain about him, they couldn't deny that he had shown them something unexpected. The rest of the semester would prove just how much a human could accomplish in a galaxy of aliens. The next few days at the academy were both exciting and challenging for Ethan. As much as he tried to focus on his studies, the stares from the alien girls were hard to ignore. They watched him closely, some curious, some skeptical, and others, like Zara, amused by his presence. Ethan knew it wasn't going to be easy, but he was determined to prove that he belonged. The classroom was set up for a practical exercise the next day. The alien girls, with their superior strength, agility, and skills, were all eager to show off their abilities. Ethan couldn't help but feel a little out of place as the teacher announced the challenge. Today's exercise will test both physical and mental skills. Each of you will face a series of challenges, and the winner will be decided based on both strength and strategy. The girls were excited. They had been training for years, and they knew this was their chance to show Ethan just how far behind humans were. Ethan, on the other hand, wasn't intimidated. He knew that his strength wasn't in physical combat like the others, but he had something else, a sharp mind. He was determined to make that work to his advantage. The first challenge was a combat simulation. The students had to face off in a controlled environment where they would fight against holographic enemies. The teacher called on Zara to go first. She stood tall, confident in her abilities, and easily defeated the holographic enemies. The class clapped in approval. Zara was one of the best fighters in the academy, and it was no surprise that she had passed the test with ease. Next, Kara, the warrior princess, took her turn. She was fierce and fast, cutting through the holograms with grace and precision. The other girls cheered for her, knowing she was a force to be reckoned with. Kara had a natural talent for combat, and it was clear that no one could match her. Strength. As Ethan watched, he felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. He knew he couldn't compete with the girls in terms of physical strength, but he had to try his best. When his turn came, he stood up and walked to the center of the room. The alien girls watched him closely, some with a look of amusement, others with curiosity. The simulation began, and Ethan faced off against the holographic enemies. His movements were slower compared to the others, but he wasn't focused on speed or strength. Instead, he used his mind, observing the patterns of the holograms and analyzing their weaknesses. While the others relied on sheer power, Ethan used strategy. His calm and thoughtful approach surprised everyone. Instead of charging in blindly, he dodged, outsmarted the holograms, and worked his way through the challenges, one step at a time. When the simulation ended, Ethan had successfully completed the test, though it took him longer than the others. The class was silent. They hadn't expected this. Ethan's approach was different, but it worked. Zara, who had been watching with a smirk, crossed her arms. "Not bad for a human," she muttered. There was a hint of respect in her voice, though she wasn't ready to fully admit it. Kara was. Quieter, but Ethan could see the look in her eyes. She wasn't used to being outperformed in any way, and she had been impressed, though she would never admit it. The teacher smiled. "Well done, Ethan. You may not have been the fastest, but your strategy and quick thinking were impressive. That's what we value here." The class was now watching Ethan in a different light. They still had their doubts, but he had shown them something they hadn't expected. It wasn't just about being strong. It was about thinking on your feet and using your mind to solve problems. As the days passed, Ethan continued to surprise the alien girls. In the next few lessons, they tested his knowledge in different areas: alien history, advanced technology, and tactical planning. Ethan excelled in these subjects, showing a deep understanding of subjects that many of the alien students had never even considered. Some of the girls began to realize that his mind was just as powerful as their physical abilities. One afternoon, Lyra, a telepathic alien, approached Ethan after class. She had been one of the first to look down on him, but now she was curious. "Ethan," she began, "how do you know so much about our history and technology? So most humans can't even comprehend some of the things we've learned." Ethan shrugged modestly. "I've always been a fast learner. I think humans have a lot to offer the galaxy. We may not have the same abilities as other species, but we make up for it in different ways." Lyra nodded, her mind racing. She had never thought of it like that. "Maybe we've been wrong about you," she admitted. "Don't rely on strength like the rest of us. Instead, you rely on your mind." Ethan smiled. "I guess every species has its strengths. Ours just happen to be different." Meanwhile, Kara watched from a distance. She wasn't sure what to make of Ethan yet. His intelligence was impressive, but she still wasn't convinced that humans were anything special. She had been trained her whole life to rely on physical strength and combat skills, and those were traits that had served her well. But Ethan's approach was something new. He was always thinking, always analyzing. It was frustrating, yet oddly fascinating. As the week went on, the alien girls continued to test Ethan, and he kept surprising them. His mind, his strategy, and his resilience were something they hadn't expected from a human. Slowly, the girls began to realize that there was more to Ethan than they had first believed. He was different, yes, but in ways that made him valuable to the class. By the end of the week, Ethan had earned their respect, though some, like Zara and Kara, were still reluctant to fully admit it. But Ethan didn't mind. He knew that actions spoke louder than words, and he had proven that he belonged. His journey was just beginning, and while it wouldn't be easy, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the days passed at the academy, Ethan continued to make progress. The alien girls, once skeptical of him, had begun to see him in a new light. They no longer viewed him as a joke or a curiosity, but as someone who could hold his own still. It wasn't enough to win over everyone. One afternoon, as Ethan was walking to his next class, he saw Lyra sitting on a bench, deep in thought. Lyra, with her long blue hair and sharp features, was a quiet and intelligent alien from a species known for their telepathic abilities. She had been one of the first to doubt Ethan's abilities, but had started to look at him differently after his impressive performances in class. "Hey, Lyra," Ethan said, walking over to her. Lyra looked up, a slight surprise crossing her face. "Oh, Ethan, I didn't expect to see you here. I was just heading to class," Ethan said with a grin. "But I saw you sitting alone. Everything okay?" Lyra hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I'm fine, just thinking about ... some things." Ethan sat down next to her. "Mind if I ask what's on your mind?" Lyra sighed, a slight frown on her face. "I've been thinking about how ... different you are. It's not just your intelligence. You approach everything so differently than we do. It's intriguing. I've never met anyone like you." Ethan chuckled. "That's probably a good thing, right?" Lyra smiled faintly. "It's not bad. I'm just not used to humans thinking like you do. You make me question everything." "I thought I knew about your species. I guess that's the thing about people," Ethan said thoughtfully. "No one is exactly the same. Humans, aliens, we all have our strengths and weaknesses." Lyra looked at him, her telepathic abilities giving her the power to read emotions and thoughts. But for once, she found herself respecting Ethan's privacy. "I didn't expect to get along with you," she admitted. "At that, you would. Be like every other human week. Is Leo overwhelmed by the challenges here? But I was wrong," Ethan smiled. "I don't mind proving people wrong. I've had to do it my whole life." Lyra studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You know, I think you might be onto something. Maybe I've been too quick to judge humans. There's more to you than meets the eye." Ethan looked at her, appreciating her honesty. Well, I'm glad we can talk. If you ever need help with anything, don't hesitate to ask. Lyra nodded, her expression softening. Thank you, Ethan. Over the next few days, Lyra and Ethan continued to talk more often. Their conversations ranged from schoolwork to their differences and even their shared interest in the galaxy's many species. Lyra was fascinated by how Ethan saw the universe. With his unique perspective as a human, he, in turn, was amazed by the depth of her understanding of alien cultures and her ability to connect with others through her telepathic powers. One day, while they were studying in the library, Kara approached them. Kara had always been standoffish with Ethan, unsure of what to make of him. But today, something had changed. Perhaps it was his consistent performance in class. Or maybe it was his growing friendship with Lyra, but Kara found herself curious. You. To seem to be getting along well, Kara said, her voice surprisingly neutral. Ethan looked up from the book he was reading. Yeah, we've been studying together. Lyra's been a big help with some of the more advanced topics. Lyra smiled. He's a fast learner. I'm impressed. Kara nodded, though her eyes were still guarded. I've been watching you. Ethan, you've managed to stay here longer than I thought you would. I'm still not convinced that humans have much to offer the galaxy, but I'll admit you're different. Ethan met her gaze, unwavering. I'm not here to prove anything. To you, Kara. I'm just here to learn and do my best. Kara raised an eyebrow. That's fair, but don't think I won't be watching. I don't trust humans easily. I don't expect you to, Ethan replied. But I hope one day you'll see that we're not so different after all. Kara didn't respond immediately, but she did seem to be thinking. She wasn't sure why, but something about Ethan's calm confidence was starting to get under her skin. She had always relied on her strength and combat skills to solve problems. But Ethan's strength wasn't in his muscles, it was in his mind. That was something she had never really understood, and it both frustrated and intrigued her. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan's bond with Lyra continued to grow. They spent more time together, and slowly, other students began to take notice. Zara, who had once mocked him, was starting to see him in a new light, and she had always been the strongest and most confident. But Ethan had something that she didn't, unwavering sense of self. And while she would never admit it openly, Zara was starting to respect him. One afternoon, as Ethan and Lyra were walking to their next class, Kara approached them again. This time, she seemed different, less hostile, more ... thoughtful. You. No, Kara said, looking at Ethan with a curious expression. I've been thinking. Maybe I judged you too harshly. You've got guts, I'll give you that. Ethan smiled. Thanks. It's not easy being the only human here, but I'm doing my best. Kara looked at him, her eyes no longer full of suspicion. You've earned some respect, Ethan. I still don't know what to make of humans, but I'll admit, you've surprised me. Lyra smiled at the change in Kara. It's good to see you finally coming around, Kara. Kara shrugged, a rare smile tugging at her lips. Don't get used to it. I'm still not going to go easy on you in the next sparring match. Ethan chuckled. I wouldn't expect anything less. The bond between the three of them began to grow stronger, and Ethan found himself surrounded by a group of students who, while still skeptical, were starting to see him as more than just a human. It wasn't easy, but one thing was clear, and was earning his place among them, one step at a time. The week was coming to a close, and the academy had one last challenge in store for the students, a test of strength. The competition wasn't about sheer power or speed. Instead, it would test how well the students could work as a team to complete a series of tasks in a hostile, simulated environment. The entire class would be divided into teams of 2, and each pair would have to navigate through a difficult, obstacle-filled course. Ethan wasn't sure what to expect. His strengths were in thinking and strategy, not in physical combat. But he had spent the last few days training with Lyra, Zara, and even Kara. They had taught him how to move more efficiently, how to defend himself, and how to read the terrain. He wasn't as fast or strong as the other students, but he had learned how to use his surroundings to his advantage. When the instructor announced the team assignments, Ethan was paired with Zara. At first he was nervous. Zara had been one of the most vocal about his limitations, and although she had shown respect for his intelligence, he wasn't sure if she would work well with him in a physical test. But the instructor had made the assignments, and Ethan knew he would have to make the most of it. Zara, noticing his hesitation, gave him a pointed look. "Don't think I'm going to go easy on you, human," she said, her voice filled with confidence. "I want to win this challenge, and I expect you to pull your weight." Ethan nodded. "I'll do my best, Zara. Let's make sure we win." The simulated environment was unlike anything Ethan had seen before. The course was filled with fake alien creatures, treacherous terrain, and sudden obstacles. Some sections of the course were narrow and full of sharp turns, while others had moving platforms and hidden traps. The students were required to work together to solve puzzles, defeat holographic enemies, and cross difficult landscapes. It would be tough for anyone, but for Ethan, it was especially daunting. As the challenge began, Ethan and Zara took the lead. Zara, with her incredible strength, was able to clear the obstacles that involved heavy lifting or brute force. She carried large rocks to block hidden traps, cleared paths through thick alien underbrush, and cut through tough vegetation. Ethan, though not as strong, used his mind to direct their course, analyzing the layout of the terrain, calculating the best way to move forward and using his quick thinking to avoid the traps. At one point, they reached a section of the course where they had to cross a narrow bridge suspended above a deep ravine. The bridge was swaying and appeared unstable. Zara was confident she could make it across with no problem. But Ethan wasn't so sure. "Wait, Zara," he said, stopping her before she stepped onto the bridge. "We need to be careful here. If you take the wrong step, the bridge could collapse." Zara rolled her eyes. "I've crossed tougher bridges than this." Ethan shook his head. "I know you're strong, but we have to think. Look over there." He pointed to a set of metal supports that seemed to have weakened. "The bridge is not as sturdy as it looks. We'll need to move slowly and test each step before we cross." Zara didn't like being told what to do, but she respected Ethan's strategy. "Fine, but you better not slow me down." Together, they crossed the bridge, step by step. Zara tested each plank before stepping forward, and Ethan directed her from the other side, guiding her through the danger. It took longer than expected, but they made it across safely. The rest of the course was filled with more obstacles, some physical, others requiring more mental agility. They had to decode an ancient alien language to unlock a gate, dodge falling boulders, and work together to defeat a series of holographic enemies that appeared out of nowhere. Every time they completed one challenge, another one seemed to appear as they neared the final stretch. Ethan was starting to feel the pressure. His energy was running low, and Zara seemed to be growing impatient. "Come on, we're almost there," she urged, pulling ahead. Ethan hurried to catch up, but his foot slipped, and he stumbled. He reached out to grab a nearby vine for support, but it was too late. He was about to fall into a pit of sharp rocks below. Without thinking, Zara rushed forward and grabbed his arm, pulling him back just in time. "Don't you dare fall, human," she said, breathing heavily. Ethan, his heart racing, looked at her in surprise. "Thanks. I almost fell." Zara, still holding his arm, gave him a small smirk. "Yeah, well, I wouldn't want to lose." "Because of you?" Ethan smiled back. "I think we've got this. We're so close." With their teamwork, they finally reached the end of the course. The finish line was just ahead, and although both of them were exhausted, they pushed forward. Together, they crossed the final marker, and the simulation ended. The instructor appeared before them, smiling. "Well done, Zara and Ethan. You two worked well together. You may not have been the fastest, but you showed something just as important: teamwork and strategy." The other students, who had already finished, gathered around to see how they had done. Kara nodded in approval, her gaze no longer filled with suspicion. "You did well, human," she said, her tone less cold than before. Lyra smiled at them both. "I knew you had it in you, Ethan." Zara, though still as proud as ever, gave Ethan a respectful nod. "You didn't slow me down. So maybe humans aren't as bad as I thought." Ethan, smiling, nodded back. "I told you we could do it. We make A good team. As they walked back to the academy, Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about winning. It was about showing the others that humans had something valuable to offer. He had earned their respect, not through strength, but through his intelligence and his ability to work with others. The journey ahead would still be difficult, but now Ethan knew he had the support of his classmates. And as the days passed, he was beginning to feel like he truly belonged. The days after the test of strength passed quickly, and the class was soon gearing up for another challenge. But Ethan wasn't thinking about the upcoming lessons. His mind was still on what had happened during the last test. That he had learned more than just how to survive in a tough environment. He had learned something about his classmates. Ethan had been surprised by Zara's help when he almost fell into the pit. She had always been tough on him, and he never expected her to show such concern. But in that moment, she had acted without hesitation, saving him from danger. It was a small act, but it made Ethan realize something important. They weren't so different. After all, it wasn't just Zara who had changed. Kara, too, seemed to be softening toward him. When they passed each other in the halls, she no longer gave him the cold stare she once had. Instead, she gave him a brief nod, almost as if acknowledging his strength. Not physical strength, but mental strength. Even Lyra, who had always been the most open-minded of them all, had become more of a friend. Their conversations were no longer just about their differences. They shared ideas, experiences, and thoughts about the future. One afternoon, as Ethan was walking through the academy's garden, Lyra caught up with him. She looked thoughtful, as if she had something important to say. "Ethan," she began, her voice quiet, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day, about humans and how we all have our strengths." Ethan turned to her, surprised. "What do you mean?" Lyra paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I've always believed that our species are the best at everything. We've learned so much, and we've achieved so much. But you," she hesitated, choosing her words carefully, "you've shown me that strength doesn't always mean power. It can mean something else, like the way you think, the way you solve problems. You've changed how I see humans." Ethan smiled. "I'm glad I could make you see that. It's not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about what you bring to the table, no matter where you come from." Lyra nodded. "I've been too quick to judge. I've seen humans as nothing more than weak, primitive beings. But you've shown me that we were wrong." Ethan shrugged. "Maybe we're all wrong about each other. No one's perfect." Lyra smiled at him, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "You've taught me something important, Ethan. I'm glad you're here." Just then, Kara walked, by her usual confident stride making the ground beneath her seem to shake. She stopped when she saw Ethan and Lyra talking. "What's going on here?" Kara asked, her tone a bit playful. Lyra laughed. "I was just telling Ethan how wrong I've been about humans. He's proven me wrong more times than I can count." Kira raised an eyebrow. "Really? I've got to admit, I never expected a human to last this long. You've impressed a lot of us, Ethan." Ethan looked at Kara. "I'm just doing what I can. I'm not trying to impress anyone." Kara chuckled. "Maybe, but you've done it anyway." "I think we all owe you an apology for underestimating you." Ethan was surprised. He hadn't expected an apology, let alone from Kara, who had been one of the hardest on him. "No need for that," he said. "I'm just glad we're working together now." Kara nodded. "I guess we are. You've earned our respect, even if I don't always show it." "You've got something we didn't see before." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. It wasn't just about being accepted, it was about earning respect, one step at a time. And now he could see that the alien girls were beginning to respect him for who he was, not just as a human, but as someone who had something valuable to offer. That evening, the instructor called the class together for a meeting. He stood before them, his calm eyes watching the students closely. "We've come a long way since the beginning of the semester," the instructor began. "You've all shown incredible skill and talent, and I've seen some impressive growth, especially in our newest student." Ethan blinked, surprised by the attention. He hadn't expected the instructor to single him out. But he stood tall, trying to keep his nerves in check. The instructor continued. "Ethan, you've proven that humans can be just as capable as any species in the galaxy, Your ability to think, to adapt, and to work with others has impressed us all. I'm proud of the progress you've made, and I'm confident that you have a bright future ahead of you." The entire class turned to Ethan, and for the first time, he didn't feel like the outsider. The girls looked at him with respect, not pity or amusement. It was a small victory, but it meant everything to him. The instructor smiled. "This is what we value here. Strength, yes, but also intelligence, teamwork, and perseverance. I hope you all continue to grow in these ways, no matter where you come from." The class nodded, and for the first time, Ethan felt truly accepted. The alien girls who had once looked down on him now saw him as an equal. They had learned to appreciate what humans could bring to the table. He had earned his place among them. Later that night, as Ethan sat in his room reflecting on the day's events, he couldn't help but smile. He had come so far since his first day at the academy. The road ahead was still long, and there would be more challenges to face. But Ethan knew one thing for sure. He had found his place in this galaxy, and he wasn't going to let anyone take it away from him. The academy was quiet as the students gathered for the final test of the semester. It was a test of all the skills they had learned: combat, teamwork, strategy, and adaptability. The stakes were high, but for Ethan, it was more than just another test. It was a chance to prove to himself and to everyone else that he truly belonged. The entire class stood together in the large training hall, waiting for the instructor to give the signal. Ethan glanced around, his eyes meeting the gazes of Zara, Kara, and Lyra. Each of them had become more than just a classmate. I think they'd become allies, friends, and in some ways, family. They had helped him grow in ways he hadn't expected. And now, as the final challenge loomed, he felt ready. He knew they had all come a long way since that first day. The instructor stepped forward, his calm demeanor as steady as always. "This final test will require you to combine all the skills you've learned," he explained, "together in teams to complete a series of challenges. But this time, the challenges will be different. There will be obstacles you won't expect, and you'll have to think on your feet. Teamwork and adaptability will be just as important as individual strength." The students nodded, their faces serious. They were ready. When the instructor revealed the team assignments, Ethan was surprised. He was paired with Kara, the fierce warrior princess, who had once been the most doubtful of his abilities. Despite their differences, they had become a strong team in recent weeks, and now they would have to prove themselves in this final test. "You're with me," Kara said, giving him a nod. "Don't slow me down." Ethan met her gaze, his heart pounding. "I won't. We'll make it through this together." The first challenge was a series of tactical exercises in a simulated environment. Ethan and Kara were dropped into a dense forest where they had to navigate through thick trees, avoid hidden traps, and outwit a group of holographic enemies. The goal was to reach a safe zone without being detected, and it was up to them to work together to succeed. Kara took the lead, her sharp senses and quick reflexes allowing her to move silently through the forest. Ethan followed closely behind, his mind working overtime to plan their route and analyze their surroundings. They moved carefully, avoiding the traps and staying out of sight. At one point, they encountered a group of holographic enemies ahead. Kara immediately motioned for Ethan to stay low. She was ready to charge in and defeat them with sheer strength. But Ethan had a different plan. "Wait," he whispered, pulling her back. "There's a better way." Kara raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" Ethan pointed to a nearby tree with thick vines hanging from it. "We can use the vines to swing across the clearing. It'll give us an advantage and let us bypass the enemies without being noticed." Kara hesitated for a moment, but then she nodded. "Fine, lead the way." Ethan quickly and carefully set up the plan, using the vines to swing across the clearing. Kara followed, her agility allowing her to move easily through the trees. They made it across without being seen, and they continued on their way. As they neared the safe zone, the challenges became more difficult. They had to solve puzzles, avoid deadly traps, and even face off against other teams. But through it all, they worked together, using both their strengths to complement each other. Kara's combat skills and speed helped them get past obstacles, while Ethan's strategic thinking and quick problem-solving kept them one step ahead. Finally, they reached the last obstacle, a maze with shifting walls and hidden traps, moved at random, making it difficult to find the right path. Ethan's heart raced as he scanned the maze, trying to figure out how to navigate it. "Kara, we need to move quickly," Ethan said, his mind racing. "There's a pattern to the walls. I think if we move in a specific order, we can avoid the traps." Kara, trusting Ethan's judgment, followed his lead. They moved in sync, avoiding the traps and making their way through the maze. It wasn't easy, but Ethan's quick thinking and Kara's strength saw them through. In the end, they reached the center of the maze, where the final marker waited. "We did it," Ethan said, breathing heavily. He looked at Kara, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "We really did it." Kara gave him a rare smile. "I'll admit, you're not as useless as I thought. You've got more than just brains, you've got heart." Ethan smiled back. "Thanks. And you've got strength more than I could ever hope to match." The two of them stood there for a moment, taking in their victory. The rest of the class had already made it through, but Ethan knew that this challenge was more than just about finishing first. It was about proving that they could work together, that they could combine their strengths to overcome anything. As they returned to the Academy's main hall, the instructor greeted them with a smile. "Well done, Ethan and Kara. You've completed the test and shown what true teamwork can accomplish." The other students clapped, and for the first time, Ethan felt a sense of belonging. It wasn't just because they had finished the test, it was because they had earned each other's respect. The alien girls who had once seen him as weak now looked at him as an equal. They saw him for who he was, not just as a human, but as someone who could contribute to the galaxy in his own. Way later, as Ethan sat in his room reflecting on the day's events, he felt a sense of peace. He had come to the Academy to prove something, to prove that humans had value in a galaxy full of powerful species. And now he knew that he had done just that. The road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but Ethan was no longer afraid. He had found his place among the stars, and he knew that, no matter where he went, he would always have the strength to face whatever came next.